So you might be able to tell, based on this piece of machinery, that I have built a PC. More accurately, I managed to trick one of my friends who is way more experienced with these things into building it for me. I have been an Apple user my entire life. Everything I have is Apple. Actually, one of the few things that I own that isn't Apple are these Sony headphones. I've been stuck in the Apple ecosystem for a while, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I bought the M1 MacBook Pro, and honestly, it's one of my best purchases ever. It's just a fantastic machine, and it was my main editing workhorse for ages. Considering the fact that I don't really play games, M1 MacBook Pro was able to handle Hitman from 2016 and also Minecraft. As we all know, Minecraft is one of the most demanding games out there on the market right now. For my uses, the M1 MacBook Pro was pretty good. Now, ironically, one of the reasons I made this decision is because of the Mac Studio. Let's take a deep dive into my reasons, and then I'll also discuss the challenges of having a Windows PC and the benefits of having one. If you're interested in only the conclusion, I should have the chapter markers in the description of this video, so feel free to skip ahead if you're uninterested. I'll also be discussing the specs of my build, and of course, the decision making behind those specs. You might be wondering, what does the Mac Studio have anything to do with a custom built PC? Well, the thing is, as a lifelong Apple fan, when the Mac Studio dropped, I just immediately thought to myself, okay, I guess I have to buy that. And then after it was announced, I finally was able to check the price on the website and check out all the specs, and I realized something. For me to get the ideal specs that would last me for a while, I realized that it would cost me roughly around 362,800 yen. Now, 362,800 yen is only 32 gigs of RAM, which is what my custom built PC has, by the way, and 2 terabytes of SSD, and this does not include the peripherals such as the monitor, keyboard, and mouse. It's worth noting that in addition to that, this is the baseline model, so I'm not even getting the M1 Ultra spec here, and I'm not getting a shit ton of cores either. At the end of the day, I would basically only be upgrading the SSD storage. On the other hand, as a quick spoiler, the combined price of my 2 super fast SSDs for my PC is roughly less than 20,000 yen. The upgrade for 2 terabytes of SSDs on the Mac Studio, however, was 84,000 yen. I don't know about you, I've been pretty bad at math my entire life, but when it comes down to that, the choice was simple. But it's not just about that, actually. Another reason why I had such a hard time rationalizing getting a Mac Studio instead is the lack of upgradability. As I mentioned before, I have been more than satisfied with my M1 MacBook Pro. In fact, it has actually exceeded my expectations in so many different ways. However, here's the problem. I sacrificed and settled on things that I shouldn't have, and I've learned a lot from it. That being said, because Apple is basically impossible to upgrade, especially with their own Apple Silicon, it has kind of put me in a difficult position. So the mistake that I made was choosing 249 gigabytes of SSD storage. That is simply not enough. Speaking as someone who edits videos for a living, specifically videos shot at a high bit rate and a variety of different codecs, I underestimated how annoying it would be to constantly work off of an external hard drive or an external SSD. A lot of people said, oh, you can just save your money and get an SSD instead. Here's the problem with that. First of all, you have to buy the SSD, so you're not really saving money. Second of all, the hassle of always having to have that with you wherever you go, instead of having the files just saved on your computer, it really is a significant issue. I myself normally use a 4 terabyte HDD that I just picked up from the electronics store. really solid device. I have no complaints about it whatsoever. However, the reason why I chose an HDD over an SSD is because I actually just needed simple file storage. This wasn't just for video editing at this point. 249 gigabytes just wasn't cutting it for basic file storage. And so I was forced to get an HDD because I could afford a significantly larger amount of storage for an HDD than I would with an SSD. The problem with working off of an HDD when video editing is, of course, that it actually slows down your workflow, and it kind of causes some frames to be dropped here and there, even on videos that are not even that demanding. I swear, sometimes I'm just editing 720 or 1080 footage, and because I'm working off of this HDD, I can see that my computer is struggling to process it. The M1 MacBook Pro is a powerful machine, and yet it's struggling because I'm forced to work off of this, honestly, slow external hard drive. Now, that's my fault, but the fact that I'm basically being punished because I made that one error when I first ordered the M1 MacBook Pro kind of dissuaded me from deciding to buy a Mac Studio. Because let's think about it. What if one day I decide 2 terabytes of internal storage is simply not enough? So right now I have 2 terabytes built into my PC. However, I've already decided to eventually buy an 8 terabyte HDD that I can just add into the hard drive tray of this PC and just use it as archives of old videos, old files, you know, all that stuff. And then on the 2 terabytes of SSD, I will just store all of the important stuff. So on the first terabyte has my OS and my programs. On the other SSD, I have video files, I have games, I have work stuff, you know, usual stuff. Anytime I'm done with the videos, I just send it over to the archives. 8 terabytes of HDD, which I can afford at a really great price of 12,000 yen on Amazon. There's just one example of how the upgradability of a PC is vastly superior to Apple. I get why it's more difficult to upgrade on Apple devices. The fact is, I would have no idea what to do on an Apple device. I barely know what to do here on a PC, to be honest. But on an Apple device, I feel like they were engineered to basically be impossible for an ordinary person to understand. They were made to be as difficult as possible for the average person to just take apart and break down and add their own shit. The whole point is to force their consumers, the Apple consumers, to buy more of their items. So that's why, even though the M1 MacBook Pro was good, I had some friends who immediately got the M1 Pro MacBook Pro as soon as it came out. But Apple products are designed to basically seem outdated the moment a new thing comes out. On the other hand, if you have a custom built PC, you will find that it's actually very hard to make it seem or feel outdated. The third and perhaps most important reason behind my decision is that when I actually looked at my workflow, there was nothing preventing me from moving on to a Windows system. A lot of people I know, their workflow is actually dependent on the Apple ecosystem. Some video editors that I know rely completely on Final Cut Pro. Myself, on the other hand, I don't use Final Cut Pro at all, mostly because I think it's a garbage program and I don't think anyone should use it. And other Mac-specific programs are not really in my day-to-day workflow either. So for an example of this would be GarageBand. I sometimes use GarageBand to add some audio effects that aren't available on Premiere Pro. However, there is an Adobe program called Adobe Audition, and I could do everything there as well. And honestly, if you say on your CV that you know how to use Adobe Audition, you'll probably get farther than if you just said, oh, I know how to use GarageBand. So that it wouldn't stop me. And I'm not getting rid of my MacBook Pro anyway, so I can still use GarageBand if I really need to. So after taking all of that into account, I realized the only thing stopping me from entering the Windows ecosystem or entering the PC master race is just this fear of unknown. You know, anytime you're spending a significant amount of money, well, I don't know about you, but for me, this was a significant amount of money. There's always this fear that it's not gonna be a good idea. Buyer's remorse is a very real thing, and it's something that I constantly thought about in the days and weeks leading up to buying all the parts and assembling it. The entire time that I was putting everything into Parts Picker or putting everything into an Amazon list, I was just thinking, okay, if I buy this first, if I buy that first, then I can actually still use that even if I back out. Now, that changed completely when I bought the RTX 3060. That was actually one of the first things that I bought for it. The mouse and the keyboard are the other two things that I first bought. But when I got the 3060, I realized, okay, now this is real. You know, it's not like I can take the 3060 and plug it into my MacBook Pro. Although that might be a pretty badass video. You know, then again, I'm pretty sure Linus Tech Tips has done a video on that. Maybe. You know, I'm gonna check that later and then just put an editor's note. Anyway, I managed to overcome that fear on the other end when I realized what this machine could actually unlock for me. So an example of an area in which this machine would actually help me improve is video editing. So with 32 gigabytes of RAM and a great CPU, I actually have found that editing with my new PC is vastly superior to the editing on my M1 MacBook Pro. Don't get me wrong, a significant reason for some of the problems I had with editing on my M1 MacBook Pro is related to working off of an HDD. However, even when I would edit videos off of my internal SSD, I noticed that editing in Premiere Pro wasn't as smooth as editing on Final Cut Pro. After doing some tests, I noticed especially that the struggles that I experienced on Premiere Pro after adding color correction on an adjustment layer were like ridiculously obvious in comparison to the smooth sailing that I experienced when adding color correction on Final Cut Pro. And I just wasn't willing to make that shift over to Final Cut Pro, even though in the long run it would save me money. So those are the main reasons why I decided to build this custom PC. Thank you for watching up until this point of the video. Unfortunately, if I include the rest of the video, then this video will be an hour long and I'll have even fewer views than I normally get. If you're interested in learning more about this process, stay subscribed and I'll keep you in the loop. I'll be releasing a video about the benefits of owning a PC, and of course, I will be making a video about what every Apple owner should know before making the move over to Windows.